Hello. So this video, the idea came around for it because I was having a conversation with another behavioral trainer, and they had objected to the fact that I referred to myself as my dog's owner. And they said that I shouldn't call myself the owner. I should call myself my dog's canine caregiver, because dogs are not property like my TV or my car. They're sentient beings, and so I shouldn't regard myself as my dog's owner. And this caused me a few problems. I said, I completely disagree. Firstly, I do own him. Legally, I own him. So he is classed as mine. And the reason why that's very important is because should somebody steal him or take him, and I go to report him missing at the police station, the first thing they're going to ask me is, am I his owner? And I'm concerned that if I said, no, I'm his canine caregiver, they might devote less time to trying to find him. I'm his owner, and I think it's important to state that. But perhaps the more important reason, and this is kind of where this idea for this video started, is my dog doesn't care. He doesn't care if I call myself his owner or his caregiver or his, oh my God, what was the other ones? Canine guardian. He doesn't care. He's not interested in any of that because he's a dog. He doesn't know what those terms mean and is even less interested. So I don't need to worry about whether or not I offend him, because of course he's not offended, because he doesn't understand the terms. These are terms for people, so that other people might be happy with what I think about or say about my dog, and I don't care about those people. I don't care if this person thinks that I should be calling myself a caregiver rather than owner. They're not important to me. What's important to me is me and my dog, and he's not worried about the political correctness. And I see this political correctness just going madder and madder. I'll have a client who'll ring me up and they'll say, I want to discuss my dog's reactivity. Once upon a time, they would have said to me, he's aggressive. Now, he may not be being aggressive, but they interpret it as aggressive. But straight away, I know kind of what he's doing. He's growling or barking or lunging. I know what I'm dealing with. As soon as a client says my dog's reactive, I now have to try and find out what they mean by that. When you say reactive, because of course, if something happens over there and my dog looks, he reacted. He's reactive to it. So do they mean that he just looks at stuff? Does he mean he gets excited by stuff? Does it mean he's aggressive? I have no idea. So I have to start trying to get them to quantify what they mean by reactive. So I think we've just gone a little bit too far. My dog won't be offended if I say he's aggressive, because he can understand me, because he's a dog. So I don't need to worry about this. This is just appeasing other people who I really don't care about. So if you're going to call me and tell me about a problem with your dog, I'd much rather you told me if he's aggressive, that he's aggressive. If he does an aggressive display, that he does an aggressive display. I know straight away what sort of things you're talking about. So don't waste my time with that. But then I started to think about all the other things that have kind of still get spouted that we just think, hang on, that's not right, is it? That's not true, is it? And this list started forming in my head. I wrote some of them down. One of them was going through doorways first. It shows your dog you're in charge, you're the leader, because pack leaders always lead. Well, actually, anyone who studied packs knows that that's not the case. Pack leaders usually don't lead. In fact, they're usually at the back. It's usually the ones that are the best hunters that are at the front. Security is left to the leader. Normally the leader is at the back. So me going through my doorway first is not going to say anything to my dog about our relationship whatsoever. In fact, my dogs always go through the door first because it's more practical. And never once has one of them gone, I'm going to stage a mutiny. If I can get through the door first, I must be the leader. I'm going to change things. It's just a time waste. So don't bother with that. If it's more practical for you to let your dog go through the door first, let your dog go through the first. It won't change anything about your relationship. Similarly with eating, we hear all this thing about gesture feeding. You should pretend to eat first so your dog thinks that you're the pack leader, because again, pack leaders always feed first. Can you imagine if that was the case? If animals fed in order of rank, by the time they got to the young ones, what would be left? There'd be no food left, and in one generation, the whole group would die out of starvation. It just doesn't make any sense. And if you've ever seen any nature program with any social animal eating, what do you see? They're all eating at the same time. If it's a pack of a pride of lions and they've caught a wildebeest, they're not all forming a line and the first one comes and eats first and then the second one comes up and the third one. You've never seen that, and the reason you've never seen it is because it doesn't happen. They're all eating at the same time. So don't waste your time with that. It doesn't make any difference. Letting dogs on furniture was another one. If you let your dog up on the furniture and you put him up on the same sort of status as you, that's going to make him dominant. Of course it's not. Most dogs that want to be on the furniture, and even the dogs that guard the furniture, is not because they're trying to be dominant, it's because it's more comfortable than the floor. They say, well, I want to be up here. It's nicer. You also sit up here, so this seems to be a good place to be. So all this rubbish about not letting your dog on the furniture because it will make your dog more dominant or more aggressive, it won't. If your dog's got issues around those things, it's got issues. It's not about dominance on the furniture, it's that your dog has issues and you can resolve those issues without having to necessarily move the dog from the furniture. So don't be led by that one. You should ignore bad behavior, reward good behavior, and all that bad behavior will just go away like magic. If you ignore bad behavior, how does the dog even know that it's bad? Because you never told him. So why would he stop doing it? What you're relying on is him, through you ignoring it forever, eventually he says, well, this isn't getting me anything that I want. I should probably stop. And those of you that have tried that will have found that if it ever worked, which for most of you it probably didn't, it took a really long time. You could have got there so much quicker if you'd been allowed by your positive-only trainer to actually tell the dog, I don't like you doing that. At least if you told him you didn't like it, maybe he'd stop. But why would he stop if you've never even told him you're not happy with it? So unless it's incredibly easy to ignore, don't ignore it. Tell him you don't like it. At least it gives him a fighting chance of stopping. This one, people's heads will explode. And this one's about diet. The theory is that we should feed, and I hear all these terms, nature-specific or species-appropriate diets for dogs. Well, what is a species-appropriate diet for a dog? We're led to believe it's meat because they're carnivores. They've got canines. They're carnivores. They're designed to hunt and get. They haven't hunted for 30,000 years. They've still got canines because, of course, we've still got canines. We don't hunt. It takes a very long time for your entire dentition to change. But most scientists have pretty much accepted that dogs really are omnivores now. Domestic dogs are omnivores. And if you think about it logically, for thousands and thousands of years, dogs have fed on our leftovers. That's why they moved in with us in the first place, because we had lots of leftovers. But those leftovers were not primarily meat. We kept the meat. That was the most valuable bit. What the dogs got was the scraps, which were made up mostly of starch and carbohydrate, which is why domestic dogs can digest starch and carbohydrate and wolves can't, because they don't have wolves' digestive systems anymore. So we don't need to feed them wolf food. You see all these dog foods called, Call of the Wild and, Nature's Hunter or whatever ridiculous things, as though somehow that makes it more appealing to the dog. The dog doesn't care what the food's called. He only cares what it tastes like. So I don't need to feed my dog a high meat protein diet. But what I see, and so many of my colleagues report, and owners report, they see it before we even tell them, is that dogs fed on high meat protein diets are much more likely to be over-aroused, overstimulated. I see so many dogs whose anxiety goes through the roof when they're switched to raw food. So I'm not saying, and let's make it clear, I'm not saying that raw food is bad. What I'm saying is you've got to have a dog who has the opportunity to burn all of that off. And a lot of pet owners' dogs don't. And so while it may work really well for people who work their dogs and burn off all that energy, for a lot of the pet dogs, they just go loopy. It's like giving a kid who's sensitive a big glass of Coke and then complaining because he won't sit still. So if it's species appropriate, then it should probably contain, it should contain starch and carbohydrate. There's a lot of research that's come out now that's showing that dogs with no grain in their diet have much higher incidences of heart disease. Well, because they've had grain-based diets for thousands of years. So all this attempt at grain-free, really we should have been saying wheat-free, because that was the grain that was the problem, not all grains. Also, dogs with no vegetables have shown higher incidences of cancer. So we should be feeding them a mixture of a relatively small amount of meat, some grain, some vegetables. Dogs should never have any consequences. I mean, this is insanity. And I don't know a single positive-only dog trainer that I know who doesn't have what I would consider to be a badly behaved dog. Most of their dogs seem to be no better behaved than their clients' dogs, which is why you so rarely see positive-only trainers showing videos of their dogs working. It's because their dogs are as bad as your dogs. It just isn't a good plan. There's a reason why every animal on the planet, including us, the most intelligent species, have a consequence for making bad choices. That consequence helps you to make better choices. If you know something is going to hurt you or burn you or bite you, you avoid that thing. A dog that has no consequences will make very poor choices because he doesn't have the nous to understand the repercussions of those choices until after he's made them, which may be too late. So try not to just be led to believe that you can train a dog effectively using positive only methods, because of course positive reinforcement only isn't training. It's just feeding a dog or playing with a dog, which the dog will thoroughly enjoy, but it doesn't teach him that he shouldn't do that thing. So when your dog jumps up all the time and you're told to wait until he stops jumping up and then give him a treat for sitting down, what you're really using is positive reinforcement. If you sit, after jumping up, I'll give you something nice. So the dog learns to jump up, then sit and wait for his food when the owner doesn't want him to jump up at all. So don't waste your time with that. It's never going to work. What was the last? Socializing. Your dog needs to meet as many dogs and as many people as possible. And what I deal with all the time is over-socialized dogs. Remember, once your dog has learned how to be social, you don't need to keep socializing it. It knows how to be social. But what tends to happen is people keep socializing more and more and more. And eventually, your dog becomes obsessed with other dogs. And I'm sure lots of you have got dogs who you socialized, who now go to the park looking for other dogs. You ask that dog, why do you go to the park? He'll say, I go to the park to meet other dogs. What else? To chase squirrels. What else? To scavenge for food. What else? Oh, I like chasing the birds. You say, what about that guy there, the owner? And the dog will say, no, he's just the cab driver. He's the one who gets me to the park. And then he lets me off to go and socialize with everybody else. And your dog runs over, annoying other people and their dogs, because that's what you took him to the park for, to socialize. But now he's just being a nuisance, and you can't call him back because you have no control over him, because you spent ages teaching him to be obsessed with other people and other dogs. So it's important for a dog to socialize, but socializing really should be a meet and greet, not wrestling each other to the floor. There's a big difference between playing and play fighting. Play fighting is just practicing fighting. I want my dog to meet and greet, sniff another dog, say hello, nice to have met you, and then come away. That to me was social. If I met you on the street, said hi, grabbed you and wrestled you to the floor, you wouldn't say what a social person I was, you'd call the police. And that's what we do with our dogs. We allow them to practice beating each other up through what we call play. And then we're surprised that we end up with a dog who, if he ever gets in a fight, he's very good at it because we let him practice those techniques that made him a really good fighter. That's not what I need in my dog. I need a dog to be social, who will just meet and greet another person or another dog and then come away with me. So that's what I call socializing, but don't over-socialize them. You'll just end up with a dog-obsessed dog or a person-obsessed dog, which is not useful. Best of luck. I'll take cover now.